We welcome him. Yay.
No, we're good. Hello. How's it going? You guys doing okay? It's almost December. You guys are going to come back from Christmas and school's going to be over. It happens that quickly. Yeah. How are things? What problems are you guys having? That you want to expose to everybody? You guys have any questions about what goes on around here? I've heard you guys are a good group for asking questions, but I'm not seeing it right now. Yes. Will international visas be ready for next year? We believe so. We are expecting to hear from the from the Homeland Securities who we're waiting on. We're expecting to hear from them. We were expecting to hear from them in November. So then I got an email saying they might be a month or two late, but we expect it to be in plenty of time. So yeah, so it looks like next year we should have internationals by next year. That'll be great, huh? That'll be a lot of fun, won't it? Yeah, go ahead. Did you ask him why? Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah. I don't know, maybe he was just trying to frustrate you. Listen, I think God shares things with us, right? I mean, friends share things. But I think he also, maybe protecting your heart from something. I mean, have you ever gotten a word that seems so big at the time that you thought there's no possible way that can come true? And then years later, when it comes true, you think, oh, that really wasn't that big of a deal. Right? I mean, those things happen. And so, I think that if you really do feel like it was from the Lord, then, where's your trust come in? I mean, if he says you're not ready for it, don't you think you got to trust him? Maybe you don't like the answer, but it's the right answer. So that's where your part has to be, that you've got to trust and just lean into that. Right? Yeah. Well, I think that we mistake things sometimes for. Did everybody hear the question? Why don't you say it nice and loud? Yell it out. Well, they lied after Paul called them out, though. I mean, they fell dead after Paul called them out, right? So, and then your question was, if they're under the new covenant, how come they were killed? Right? That's your question. I think we make a mistake when we think the new covenant that we can do whatever we want and not suffer consequences. You know, you can choose your sin, but you can't choose the consequences of that sin. You can sin and be forgiven, but you, in the process, may end up with consequences that are far more severe than anything you thought was going to happen. I think that Paul at the time was protecting the integrity of what they had. That was a holy moment. That was a reverent time when the people were literally giving everything that they have for this cause that we now know as Christianity. They were giving everything, and they had two people there that were lying about what they were giving. They were being deceitful, and Paul felt like he couldn't allow that to happen with what was going on. Now, did they, what happened after they died? No, what happened to them after they died? Okay. And then what happened? Okay. And then what happened? Okay. But do you think they went to heaven? Okay. So really, in the end, what happened to them was not of great consequence to them. See, everybody in this room has a limited perspective of our mortality. We all think that death is the end. We act like death is the end, or we think that death is a bad thing. When the reality is, if we really believe what we believe, death is a promotion, death is a graduation. Death is not the end all of what happens. And God comes at things from an eternal perspective that we don't come from. So from God's standpoint, here's two people that he's dealing with, that their consequence for this sin is they need to be removed from that situation immediately, because they're going to really cause havoc in the integrity of what's going to lay foundations for Christianity throughout history. So they get removed, but they get to heaven because they were redeemed, because they're not living under the curse. My suspicion is, I don't know this firsthand because I haven't been there, but my suspicion is they're in heaven. So for them, what's the problem? They don't. So, again, you can choose your sin, but you can't choose the consequences of your sin. And I think what we have, or what the grace movement, and anybody that knows me knows that I am 100% grace-oriented. I hear the term hyper grace. I laugh at it. I don't think there's such thing as hyper grace. I think grace is hyper. Grace is amazing. Grace is bigger than anything we can imagine. However, that does not mean that you can do what you want, when you want, and not have consequences or not have to face consequences, because oftentimes there are grave consequences that you have to pay and really should pay because of the precedents that you're setting for other people. The higher you go in Christian leadership, the more accountability you need to have. Some of you have, since you've come to this school, have slept with each other. I don't know who you are, so I'm not looking at anybody in particular. I'm just guessing. In a room full of this many men and women, some of y'all have had sex outside of marriage. Now, you're a student. That's not okay, but you're not going to be kicked out of for it. If you're on staff in a church and you have sex outside of marriage, there's going to be a higher calling for that, right? Doesn't mean that you're still not under grace, but it means that we can't tolerate certain actions because of where you're at, because you influence other people with your actions. So you cannot be allowed to influence people where your influence is bringing people down. So you can still be in grace, and we still have a grace culture, but there's consequences because your actions are literally destroying other people's lives. That's when you have to be a stop. And I think that's the exact example of what happened in the book of Acts. I think if them lying like they did would have continued, I think it probably would have brought dissension and destruction to the early church. So actually, Paul calling them out and striking them dead the way he did probably saved more lives than the two that it lost, and they didn't really lose anyway because they're believers. Does that make sense? What do you mean? You mean if somebody came and said they're giving everything, and is that? Yeah. I call 911. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm totally trying to follow it, but I don't necessarily understand the question. Okay. Yeah, if somebody comes in and drops dead, the first thing we're going to do is call 911. The next thing we're going to do is pray that they get healed and resurrected. And then, from there, it depends on whether or not we're having a funeral or we're having a celebration. I mean, one of those two things is going to happen, right? What if a pink elephant fell from the sky and landed right in the middle of us here? I mean, there's all kind of scenarios that you could get into that you could just get to the point. Yes. Say that again. So, well, I mean, so you're saying if somebody came in and lied about the money that they're giving to the church? Well, that happens all the time. I mean, that happens, I'm sure, multiple times on a Sunday morning. People who pretend or act like they're tithers or givers or whatever aren't giving. But the difference is back then that was the foundational moment for the Christian church. What they were building was foundational, and the structures that we're setting, we're way beyond that point now. Yeah. I've been in meetings before. I was in one meeting in this room specifically where we had a youth conference, and this room was full of teenagers, and it was probably the most intense moment I've ever had in God's presence. And I remember all I could do was literally fall on the floor, and I didn't want to move because I felt the weight of that moment. I felt the heaviness of the presence of God that walked into the room, that I knew that it was a holy moment. Do I think like moments like that can be duplicated in the future? Of course, God can do anything He wants to. I think that I think the church in and of itself is in a moment of great change and upheaval and really almost a revolution. So I think that we are resetting some boundaries and resetting some structures, and I think with that, we are likely to see the presence of God come in such a way that certainly if something like that, could happen in the future, I don't ever see myself standing up and call anybody out and say, hey, go get a stretcher, That's just not who I am. But those were different times too, But I do think that what we have to do is we have to get back to the place where we really identify the holiness of God. I mean, we've lost that. You know, we've lost it from a standpoint of, well, he's just our best friend, and we're sons and we're daughters, which I totally believe in all that stuff. But there's also something that he is the Most High God. He is the Holy of Holies. He is the one that we need to be in an intimate relationship with as a father, but also recognize that there are moments that are bigger than us, and there are moments that are sovereign, there are moments that are holy, there are moments where, I just want to be quiet because I don't want to mess something up. So I think we do have to get some of that stuff brought back. Yeah. Good question. And actually was one thing that I wanted to bring up here today. As you go home on Christmas break, go humbly, be humble, be loving, be caring. Don't try to be right. They're not going to be impressed with you being right. They're going to be impressed with you being loving, you being respectful, you being caring. Those are what's going to impress them. They're going to be impressed with, the fact that you can go and sit in their church that maybe you don't identify with anymore, but you can totally partake and totally worship and totally, just embrace whatever culture that is and come away with it just excited for who they are. You have learned a lot of things, and Lifehouse is probably different than some of the churches that you go to. But here's the thing to remember. We're not right. I don't think there is a right church in the world. I don't think there's any church or any denomination that we look at and go, oh, they've got it right. I think someday we're all going to be in heaven and go, oh, that's what that meant. Oh, yeah, you guys did that. You guys did that really good. That was really right. And you guys did that right. And, I think that none of us are right. I think we're different. I think that churches, denominations cater to certain personalities, which is awesome because people have different personalities. But don't be right. Just go love your family. Go do extra chores. Go take the trash out. Go serve them. Serve them. Serve them and love them. That's what they want to see. Yeah. Describe toxic. Well, first of all, I think you have to decide whether or not that's an environment that you really need to go back into. It may be that you're not ready or you can't go back into that environment, that maybe it's just too over the top abusive or whatever, and only you can make that decision. But number two, once you find out who you are and you realize who you are, other people's opinions of you matter less and less. So, there are probably, I'm going to say one, maybe two people in the world that I really value their opinion of me because I know who I am. I don't need their opinion. So if, somebody takes a shot at me, which oftentimes happens online, it really doesn't affect me because honestly, I could just care less. Now, when it comes from people you love, that's harder to put that up because you do love them and you do care for them, and that's where you've got to know when's the right time. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it's a time that you've got to have a distance. Or you just got to get to a place where you really understand who you are, what you've called for, that you're a daughter of the Most High God, that you're a princess, and you enter into that environment, and you go into a place where, listen, that's not really going to hurt me. I'm just going to love you. I'm just going to serve you. I'm just going to do what I can. And if you don't like what I'm doing, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to keep loving you and serving you. That's really dying to yourself. That's really what, honestly, that's kind of what the Bible's about. Dying to ourselves. Does that help at all? Yeah. So is this somebody that you are absolutely sure that you're not supposed to be with? That should be the happiest day of your life when you see him then. Seriously, like, what the heck? Like, aren't you, when you see him and you see the manipulation and the control, aren't you just so excited that you're not part of that anymore? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it should be one of those things where, like, I am so grateful to God that we are no longer together. You can't understand how excited I am that I see that you're not in my life anymore. You don't have to tell him that, but, I mean, I guess you can if you want to, but if when you see that, when you go through that, I mean, honestly, isn't that the truth? Isn't the truth that, like, you were set free of something that would have been horrible? I mean, look down the road and think, how would that have ended? Probably badly. So I just kind of come from the other side of that. It's like, I wouldn't be worried about seeing it because there ain't no way you're getting back. So just be excited and enjoy the free ride you got there. And it's like, hey, I'm sorry you're still here renting this room or whatever, but I got other things to do. Does that make sense? I mean, that's really the way you look. Life is mostly what you look at. The way you look at it. Life is mostly, how you decide to interpret something. Bad things are going to happen to every single person. But, how you handle that or react to it will set the course for your entire existence. I think I told you guys the story of my son 3 weeks after his mom had died. I picked him up at school, and we're driving home, and from the back seat, I hear him say, "Dad, we're going to have a horrible life, aren't we?" Now as a father, I've got my 8-year-old son in the back seat who just lost his mom saying, "Dad, we're going to have a horrible life." I'm telling you, an anger came upon me, not angry at him, but an anger came upon me because I knew that was the enemy trying to form a wedge and get into my son and destroy my son. And I said to him right then, I said, anything less than an extraordinary life is not acceptable. Yeah, you lost your mom, but it's not going to define you. So what happened to you through that relationship wasn't great, but it's not going to define you. And thank God that you can move on and go forward. Right? Yeah. Did you have your hand up? Okay. You look surprised when I called on you, like. Okay. Then I won't make fun of you. Well, first of all, I I happen to believe that capitalism is God's gift to the world. Now I know that capitalism takes, is a nasty word in some environments. I think the application of capitalism has come straight out of the pit of hell. I think a system that, if you take capitalism as a system, there's no other system that has created more freedom, more wealth, given more opportunity than capitalism. You can't find it in socialism, you can't find it in communism, you can't find it in almost any other system. But what has happened, unfortunately, is we've let the greedy hijack what has become capitalism. And if we can get to the place where the church celebrates capitalism equally with generosity, and we can partner generosity with capitalism, then I think you have a very special system that will allow people to be brought up and allow and teach and train people how to make wealth and how to go forward on their own. I think one of the worst things that happened to the church is when the government started the welfare system. Because before that time, it was the church's responsibility. In fact, we still have, a lot of the tax laws are set up because the church was the welfare system, and so there's a lot of tax breaks that the church gets and things like that. But we don't do what we used to do. The government's not equipped to deal with social problems like the church is. Now maybe in cities that becomes harder, and I'm not a big city guy. I live in Humboldt County, I live in Eureka, but I know that the church, if the churches in the area banded together, we could do a lot better job at bringing social justice and bringing people out of poverty than Humboldt County government can. So, I think that we have to get to a place, and that's honestly, this is part of what I believe is happening in the church, is the revolution that's coming, is I think churches more and more are not going to be tolerated that aren't part of actually fixing social justice issues. I think as a church we have to rise up, which is why yesterday, if you were here yesterday when I talked about Malachi and the storehouse and really bringing back the original intent of what in giving is supposed to be in a church, is where we have a storehouse. Can you imagine if we had a bank account with millions and millions of dollars in it, so that when a Betty Chen, who is an amazing person in Humboldt County and does incredible stuff with the homeless, when she needs money, we were able to set aside hundreds of thousands of dollars for her, so she didn't have to fundraise, but she could do what she does. Can you imagine if the church could get to a place where we really were the storehouse for the issues that happen within the city and the city government itself? And so that's, I think, what we've got to do. And so as far as getting back to your question, as far as businesses and stuff, there's a lot of businesses that we have currently in the church that we do that provide money. I mean, honestly, BSSD in and of itself is a business. It's a college and what you guys are doing. And so, we are able to kind of ride this wave. We have, the cafes that we have, they don't make very much money, but every little bit counts. We have rental stuff. We have, there's a lot of different things that we do. And so anything within the church that, we can do, any businesses we can create, we want to be able to do that, because it's not just about creating business that then bring money into the church, but it's also creating businesses that can help people within the community. I.e., we've got Ra, who works for us. He does our landscape maintenance and stuff. And, we will oftentimes send him over to do somebody's lawn, an older person's lawn, or somebody that can't get out and do stuff. And we just do that for free. We do a lot of that stuff because it's part of who we are and wanting to help bring. Now, all this is on a microcosm. It's got to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's, where we're going with that. So I foresee a day where the church, where we as Lifehouse Humboldt have 100, 150, 200 businesses, all of which are, getting into the community and doing the work and bringing changes, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? Yeah, all the way in the back. And then I'll come up. Busy. Listen, I got a great life. I have an amazing life. I get to do what I love every single day. I get up in the morning. I can't wait to go to work. I love what I do. I've got the greatest life in the world. I feel like the most blessed man on the planet. So, my hands are in a lot of things. We're hiring people. We're bringing people. We just brought Jamie, Marty's wife, on to be our administrator. She's taken a lot of load off me, which is really nice, because there are a lot of other things I want to get involved in and I want to do. But yeah, I got a great life. I'm not sure what to tell you besides that. Okay. Yes, Marissa. Yeah, that's fair. I think, what you've got to do is realize that you came here for a reason, realize that there was a purpose that you came here, and be stubborn enough not to quit until the purpose is fulfilled. I mean, that's kind of the short answer, right? Anything worth doing is usually hard. Anything worth doing is going to have challenges. When I was a junior in high school, I didn't play football till I was a junior in high school. When I was in junior in high school, I went out and I played football, and I came home after, it was like the second day of practice, and I'm like, I quit. This is stupid. I quit. And my mom, who was awesome, she looked me straight in the eyes and she said, "The hell you are, I just bought you brand new cleats." And she made me go back out for football. Now, honestly, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I ended up playing my junior year, my senior year. I got a scholarship to college. My college was paid because I got to play football. It was a great decision on her part, but it was that lesson that she teaches me: when you start something, you finish it. And that's what I've done with my kids. My daughter did not want to finish soccer this year. She's a great basketball player, loves basketball, is not very good at soccer, did not want to finish it. But it's like, no, I didn't make you play. You signed up, you started it, you're going to finish. And that's a really crucial, key, important part of life, finishing what you start. Because a lot of times, on the very last day, everything's put in the right perspective. But if you don't get to that day, I think, what if my mom would have let me quit? My life would have been totally different, totally, completely different. I don't know that any of you would be sitting here because of that one decision. I have to finish what I start. So when you go home, you got to tell yourself, I'm going to finish. I'm going to finish what I start. Yes. What's my favorite color? I don't care. If it looks good, I'm great with it. I don't think I have a favorite. Huh? Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, my pat answer, if I was going to say an answer, I would probably say blue. However, I really could care less. Yes, Sophie. Good for you. Say that again. Well, I think that, you guys are coming out of the hardest season by far. I mean, you start, the beginning is the honeymoon, everybody's awesome phase. These people are the greatest people you've ever met. They don't have a problem, And then you get into, oh my God, these people are horrible. They suck. I can't believe it. They call themselves Christian. And then you roll from that to the discovery of, oh my God, I suck. I can't believe I call myself a Christian. And then you get to the place, honestly, you get to the place where after Christmas, you start realizing, hey, you know what? We're all a mess, but it's okay. Like, we're all a disaster, but we do the best we can, and together God does something beautiful out of it. And so you really are getting to the sweet spot, but I have a feeling most of you have just gone through a lot of those stages or are still in the stage right now of, oh my God, I suck. You're going to be okay. It's totally normal. It's totally natural. It's the way the school works. It's really the way it's designed. And am I right, Kyle? Kyle says I'm right. So I must be. So that's what happened. Jess, in the back. Yeah, I think Lifehouse is going to have 500 campuses, and I think with that we'll have probably 5 schools spread out all over the place. The Northwest is certainly one of those places that we've talked about. We don't have any plans to plant one right now, but the Northwest is probably in the top 3. So we'll expand and we'll get there and we'll see where it goes and see what happens. Jess, all the way in the back. I see that hand. Well, why do you want to change? Okay, but why? Okay. When I was in college, I became an alcoholic. So my freshman, sophomore, and junior year, I spent most of that time drinking heavily. It's what we did. We thought it was funny. And when I became a senior, I looked around and I realized, if I keep doing this, this is not going to be conducive for a successful life. Like, that doesn't equal success. So I decided that I was going to change because I wanted my life to be something different. I wanted something different for my life. And so I gathered all my roommates together and all my teammates, and I told them I'm done drinking. And at first they laughed at me. They said, there's no way. I didn't drink anymore. I quit. But I did that only, which is why I was asking you, why do you want to change? See, our school, BSSD, is not designed to put rules on you so you follow the rules. BSSD is designed to show you yourself in a greater measure so that you can want to get to that place. Because I can't motivate you like you can motivate you. I can yell at you and scream at you. I can bring you up to my office and we can act like you're in trouble and we can do all that stuff. And I can threaten to kick you out and all that. But honestly, at the end of the day, none of that works. It's whether or not you want to change. So if you want to change, all that happened was you made a mistake over Thanksgiving. Hopefully that didn't change your heart. Hopefully you still want to change. Hopefully you still want to become something better than you are now. And if that's the case, then I have full confidence that you're going to move forward and you're going to get to the other side because you want to make a difference. At the end of the day, this school, when we graduate, what you have got out of this depends 100% on you. I don't care, if you say all the teaching was wrong or all the, whatever. it's up to you to change. And you've got to decide why you're changing and what you're here for. But if you're changing because you really want to change, then you will be successful. That I can promise you. And if you're not, if you just keep going back and back and back, then you need to ask yourself, do I really want to change? Because then that's a different conversation. Right? So you made a mistake over Thanksgiving. You made a mistake, but you want to change, right? You don't want to, you now look back and say that was a mistake, right? So I think that's growth. Isn't that growth that you identify that as a mistake? That's growth that you identify that as something you don't want to do, right? Probably a year ago, you probably wouldn't have thought anything about that. But now you're like, hey, that's not who I want to be. That's not what I want to do. So now you go back in Christmas and you have another opportunity to practice changing again, to practice being the person that you want to be. That I see that as, that's amazing. That's awesome. What a great opportunity. Isn't that cool? You guys get to go home. Those of you that are going home get to go home at Christmas and you get to see how much you've changed. You get to practice what you've learned. You get to put into practice everything that you want to be. That's pretty cool. Some of you are going to come back and go, oh, man, I blew it. Yeah, dang it. All right, well, let's figure out how to make sure that doesn't happen again. But it's for you. It's not for us. Because you know what happens 10 years from now? Honestly, I don't mean this to be rude at all, but 10 years from now, you and I probably don't have any contact at all. I mean, that's just statistically, that's just what happens, right? So this isn't about, you doing something that makes me look good, because I'm not going to know you 10 years from now anyway. I mean, I might, but just statistically, you understand what I'm saying. I'm not at all being rude, right? I hope I know you 10 years from now, but statistically, most of you, we're not going to go on and have this deep relationship. So this isn't about us, it's about you. You have an opportunity to change. We're out of time. I'm glad I got to come down and at least say hi once, huh? All right, you guys are done, I think, for the day, are they? They're done? Kyle, are they done?